Ready?
Yep.
Hey folks, Turbine Guy coming back at you. Today at Freedom Fest, I am sitting with...
Benji Backer.
And Benji, what do you do?
I run the American Conservation Coalition, which is a conservative environmental group.
And how long have you been doing that for?
About 5 years.
5 years. So you go around to places like this and you try to spread your word of...
free market environmentalism and the opportunity that the market has to solve environmental issues, and why believers in the market, believers in capitalism, really should raise their voice on these issues and become part of the environmental community instead of feeling they have to fight against it.
In terms of graduation.
That's very well put. That is, because as people who know me and know my channel, I've been installing micro wind turbine, solar power, and battery banks for years, and the biggest issue I've run into is government everywhere I go. For instance, solar power, when I pull a permit here in this city, it might have certain regulations, and I go to another city that has these regulations and another city that has these. And the city I live in, they decided they were going to make a solar ordinance, and they banned all ground-mounted solar. It makes no sense. There's no logic behind it other than aesthetics. Some people might not want to look at it, but someone's house, the roof, might not have anywhere to put solar, so then you can't put it on the ground. The local government is forcing you to purchase electricity from the utility.
That's exactly, well, that's perfectly encapsulates the problem, because you look at what everyone has to deal with environmentally, with how many different regulations affect different, literally across the street there could be a completely different regulation. In a stream, for example, there's potentially 6 or 7 different jurisdictions that you have to deal with in that one point in that one stream. And you look at a solar panel and all the regulations at every single level. It's really, really hard, and that's true for almost every part of society. But if we're looking to rapidly increase our clean energy production in the United States, the regulations have to get out of the way.
They do, and it's not just the regulations, it's the people who don't know what the heck they're talking about. That's what drives me more nuts than anything. Because like I said, this one regulation where you can't have ground-mounted solar, there's no legitimate reason for that other than someone thought it was a good idea. You know, in one city I ran into, I can tell what happened is someone saw a pretty picture in a magazine of a solar system with little triangular modules in the corner that made it look nice. So they mandated that you had to have triangular modules on your system if you had a hipped roof. You can't buy a triangular module, okay? So how could people in that city with hipped roofs have a solar system?
Right.
They can't. And it makes no sense. Now you get to my story. My wife and I were both sentenced to 6 months in jail for having a useless buried chunk of concrete in our yard. What was that concrete from? It was the base of a micro wind turbine. Now, we had 1995 Minnesota state law on our side that everyone in Minnesota gets to harvest the wind, and we didn't find that statute right away, but I had been on the planning commission and city council. I knew the ordinances. I knew I could install what I did, but we had ornery neighbors who got together and petitioned the city and petitioned and pushed and bullied the city into going after us. So we've got the city now going after us for something. We ended up losing in district court, then we won at the appeals court, because the appeals court said, hey, how is this turbine different in the code than basketball hoops, clotheslines, or flagpoles? Right? So it can go wherever you want to, as long as you're not like saying violating a height ordinance, an overall encompassing ordinance. Well, the appeals court sent it back to the city saying, well, you need to revisit this, and the city took that as a chance to go after me again, and they sent me a letter that said, well, resubmit your building permit so we can review it again. And I sent them a letter that said, screw off. You don't need to for basketball hoops, clotheslines, or flagpoles. I don't need to here. That's what the appeals court said. Well, the city took that as being non-compliant, went back to the same judge who ruled against us for the same reasons, all uppity and nervous and going, well, I don't do ordinances in cities very much. I don't know very much about this. You lose again. I'm sitting there throwing my arms up going, my God, what is going on? You're the judge. You're supposed to be protecting people from this overreach. We got to the appeals court because my lawyer served the papers electronically instead of personally. They overturned and we lost. He couldn't file his appeal. City never said it didn't get the paperwork, and now all papers have to be filed electronically. So that time they're switching over. So they picked a little minute technicality instead of the interest and justice to screw us. So we left the turbine up, ended up getting a new lawyer. We're put in contempt of court. My wife finally had enough, so we took the turbine and pulled down. I chopped the top of the footing up with a jackhammer, sliced the anchor bolts and buried it. Not good enough. We're sentenced in jail for that buried chunk of concrete.
That's not something that I do. That is.
Can you understand what I'm saying? The problem is with local government regulations and local people who don't understand what's going on. And I'm sure you run into this quite a bit yourself.
Yeah, I think one of the big problems that you just alluded to is that there are a lot of people who don't realize that these sorts of regulations and the government getting in the way is actually one of the biggest, if not the biggest, reasons that we don't have scaled clean energy.
Yep.
Because if with every step of the way there's some sort of wall that you have to run through, and then you have to run around, it takes a lot longer. And then instead of your company building more, wind turbines and solar panels, you're focused on something else. And I think really it comes down to the fact that most people in this conversation are not as educated as they need to be about how we move forward on environmental policy and environmental politics, and that the local government matters a lot more than they think it does.
Yep.
And so does the state government.
Yep.
And of course the federal government matters as well, but no one's participating in that process. And so then when one person does, they're making that entire difference.
And they can. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make this entire difference. And that's what my fight's been about, is showing everybody, look, we do have rights to do this. We do need to exercise these rights. But when they see someone like me get pounded, they just sit back and go, I don't want none of that. You know what? It's just easier to buy power from the electric company, to not have hassles, and to move on with my life. And so that's a big part of the problem, too, is how all of this stuff is shown to the public by the media and all that. Which leads me to my second point. I actually blew up on Facebook and a couple other places. I've been in the UK Daily Mail and all this about this story when I was in jail. And I was up to probably about 20 million views between different videos made about me and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, because Snopes came out and did a supposed fact check on me that was completely inaccurate, all of a sudden, I'm gone. I've been censored. This was before censoring was cool, okay? But I was censored, and now my story's not out there for people to see and for people to get upset about and for people to rally around. And that's what you need sometimes, is people like me or you to come out and point these things out, that we need a rally point. We need to get together and say this is wrong, let's do it right. But when they squash you like that and don't even let your story go, how do you do it?
Right, and that's why a lot of people need to be more exposed to the problems that are existing in their own neighborhoods with these things, and rally around how can they make it better, instead of kind of turning a blind eye to a lot of these things that are happening literally right in their backyards.
Oh, they absolutely are. When all this happened to us, we had a Democrat president, we had a Democrat governor. I live in a huge Democrat state. Nobody came out to help me. I was left on my own trying to promote my micro wind turbines that are certified, and by the way, 100% recyclable. I mean, these things are such a great product. Yeah, they don't produce huge tons of it, but you know what? They're part of the puzzle. And that's the way I am. You put together what works. Some houses might have geothermal, might be a good option. Some houses are great for solar, some for wind. It depends on where you are. Maybe tidal action where you are, whatever. There's all kinds of opportunities out there. But unless we start using all these little opportunities and putting the puzzle together, how are we ever going to get there?
That's exactly right. We are all part of the puzzle for solving environmental protection with our votes, our dollars, the way that we live our lives from a work perspective. We all have such an important place to play. Nothing's going to happen overnight, right?
No.
Everyone's a part of the puzzle, and you have to realize that this is a step-by-step process. One wind turbine might not save the world, but it's slowly getting us in the right direction.
But you know what? You get that one wind turbine, and 5 people see it that like it. Now you have 6 wind turbines.
Right.
And the more you get out there, the more you prove it works, the cheaper you can make them. The more you can make, the more you can get out there. It's a cycle that you want to get into. But what's happening? Government stopping that cycle from starting.
Exactly. And individuals also believing that they don't have a voice in the conversation because it's too big of a problem that their voice doesn't matter, when that just can be further from the truth.
Yes, and that's what I'm all about, is empowering people to empower themselves to make their own difference their own way. And if people all start doing that and start spreading what they can do, we're eventually going to get to a good solution.
Absolutely. All right, well, thanks for having me.
Yes, it was a fun conversation, absolutely.
Awesome.
Turbine
Sweet.
Guy, signing off with Benji.